Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to another exciting session of Startup Summer School. Startup Summer School के जिस टॉपिक पे आज हम बात करने वाले हैं वो है डिज़ाइन थिंकिंग एंड कस्टमर डिस्कवरी। बहुत क्रूशल टॉपिक है स्टार्टअप्स के लिए कि कैसे डिज़ाइन थिंकिंग के थ्रू आप अपने कस्टमर्स की एंड यूज़र की जो नीड्स हैं उनको आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हैं, उनकी रियल प्रॉब्लम्स को आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हैं और कैसे उनका सोल्यूशन जो है वो बिल्ड कर सकते हैं। इसी पे बात करने के लिए बुलाया है हमारी बहुत अमेजिंग स्पीकर, ट्रेनर, कंसल्टेंट और फाउंडर एंड सीईओ न्यूरो नर्चर मिस मरियम सलीम खान। अस्सलाम वालेकुम मिस मरियम।
Assalamu alaikum. How are you, Asma?
मैं बिल्कुल ठीक, आप कैसी हैं?
I'm good. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for
चलिए जी मिस
inviting me
मरियम,
today.
हम अपने सेशन का ऑफिशियली आगाज करते हैं एक सिंपल से क्वेश्चन से जो जितने हमारी स्टार्टअप, हमारी ऑडियंस, हमारे यंग एंटरप्रेन्योर्स हमें सुन रहे हैं कि क्या है एक्चुअल में डिजाइन थिंकिंग इन सिंपल वर्ड्स।
Design thinking, in simple words, is a problem-solving methodology. Anything that is not able to be solved in a normal linear manner, you use design thinking for that. And the focus of design thinking is human or customer, you could say that. So, would you like me to begin?
प्लीज।
Okay, perfect. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope everyone is all right. I am speaking with, I believe, the new startups in the process that are going to join the startup ecosystem. And I don't know if you are aware of how crucial design thinking is in this process. But let me tell you before I begin with the proper presentation, but let me give you a little background to this. Design thinking is a methodology that is used by startups specifically. I'm just going to focus on the startups right now. It is used specifically by startups to design or formulate, or you could say research on their products and services. Now, let's move on and talk about design thinking from the very beginning. This is the first idea, you could say, that moves up and expands in the form of a methodology, which is called ACD. ACD is human centered design. Now, the concept of human centered design came into being when Horst Rittel, who was a design theorist, found out that there are problems around you in the surroundings or in the, you could say, in the workplace, or generally speaking in different disciplines and industries. There are certain problems which are not able to be solved in a linear fashion, or you could say in a usual way. So we call those problems wicked problems because sometimes they are not clear, sometimes they're ambiguous, sometimes they are so volatile, the circumstances or the context is so volatile that you're not able to create one solution that fits all. Sometimes they require more research. Sometimes the end is not clear, or sometimes the beginning is not clear. So they're wicked problems. They are completely volatile, they're completely challenging, they're not very clear. And the best way to go about it is to come up with a problem solving method that helps you design a solution which is closest to that problem, to solving that problem. So that process is called human centered design, in which the first step is always to find out uh, who we are designing or who we are solving the problem for. Let's move on. Okay, so human-centered design, it's not just a process. It's actually, it starts with the mindset. I'll talk more a little bit about mindset in my next slides, but let me tell you a little bit about Horst Rittel himself. He was a design theorist, and he talked about this was his coinage, you could say. He was the one who gave the term human-centered design, or wicked problems, I would say. And he said that these are multi-dimensional problems and they're difficult to solve because they often consist of incomplete and contradictory or changing requirements. Now, please focus on the word requirements, because to create any kind of solution, you need to understand what we are solving, and to need to understand the problem, you need to understand the context of that problem as well. So to make sure that so once you realize that that context is challenging and volatile, you that problem falls under the category of wicked problems. Moving on, the mindset. Now, design thinking is not just a methodology. Human centered design is not just a process. all of this, if I want to use a term which is very common and understandable for everyone, the term is called change. So all this helps you with the process of change, and change comes in the mind first. Okay, so to make sure that the change is there in the mindset, you need to understand what kind of a mindset it is that will help you design a human centered product or a service. The mindset need to have empathy. The mindset should have optimism. It should accept change. Ambiguity is uncertainty. Okay, it should accept uncertainty. It should learn from failure. There should be a lot of, you could say, revision or iterations happening, and you should be fine with it. You should not say that you're set in stone, and if you decided today something, you cannot change it in the next moment or in the next week, in the next hour, or down the line. So you need to be flexible when it comes to human-centered design and design thinking. And of course, last but not the least, you need to be creatively confident about howsoever you want to resolve a problem. Now, keeping that in mind, if you have these qualities, if you have a mindset that has all these characteristics, then probably as a founder, you're ready to apply human-centered design and design thinking to your products and services. And that's actually one of the biggest success criteria for any of the products today. Now, talk about a little bit of the origin of design thinking. The father of design thinking, Alex Fakney and William J.J. Gordon, they started off this term, and it's actually developed from psychological studies and creativity, and it also has background in engineering. Design thinking has background in engineering. So all these you could say, scientists and theorists, they created this term design thinking because they believed that there are problems that cannot be solved without a methodology in itself. Now, methodology has to have some phases in it. So let's see what phases we are talking about. Now, before we move into the phases, I would like to share this quotation with you, and I would like to read it out loud as well, because uh, understand how it works. Everyone designs who devises courses of action aimed at changing existing situations into preferred ones. Now, change. That's one underlying thought behind this quotation. And of course, everyone designs. You don't need to be a designer per se when it comes to designer, as in you don't have to have the designing or the illustrative skills to call yourself a designer. You don't have to be have the art background to call yourself a designer. Designer is anyone who designs something. It could be a process, it could be a plan of action, it could be a product, it could be a service that aims at abiding by the changing situation. Now, you all are aware of what's happening in the post pandemic era. And in the post pandemic era, we are trying to understand not only the human behavior and mindset, which is constantly evolving, and we are also trying to abide by um, the environment or the conditions that we are living in this world now, be them economic or social or climate. Okay. If you want to talk about the timeline, okay, this does not talk about 2024, but that actually traces back to when it started. It started in 1960s, and attempts were made to make design scientific. Now, do you see, when design became scientific, that means a lot of processes and procedures were added, or methodologies were defined or created at that point in time. It became a problem solver. It was used for problem solving in 1980s. IDEO became the first, or you could say, organization or institution to bring design thinking into mainstream, and then it started becoming part of all the corporations. The D School was formed, and the principles were emerged, and then it became part of architecture. And of course, Richard Buckham published this article, Wicked Problems in Design Thinking. Now, if this is just till 1992, but if you see, a lot of things happened since then. A lot of organizations have used design thinking since then, and they're still using and utilizing this methodology today. And it is not just for the startups only. It is a methodology for problem solving, so it can be used literally in any discipline or in any industry. Moving on. Now, if I talk about design thinking in itself as a definition, let's read a little bit about what exactly it is. As if HCD is a mindset, then design thinking is a process. It's not only a cognitive process or a mindset, but it has become an effective toolkit for any innovation process. Now, the word innovation calls for change as well. Innovation or to evolve from your existing situation. Um, all of that is possible if you apply this design thinking methodology to it. Okay. Now, for example, let's talk about an example right now. Imagine a use case where the veterans or the old people, they who are not able to remember their schedule for medication. Let's assume that. And what happens is that because of their old age and because of the losing memory, they're not able to remember when to take what medication, where the medication lies, who to seek help for, and things like that. So imagine that we apply design thinking, and to resolve this situation, first of all, of course, we are going to understand who we are resolving it for, and the solution that we can come up with is, for example, hypothetically speaking, you create a solution where you send, uh, you could say, pre-prescribed medication boxes or pouches, or you could say samples to the respective clients, and you send them to their home, and there is a receipt, and there is a schedule, and there is a timeline given in that, when to take, what to take, and then that becomes really the life becomes really easy for that veteran or that old age person who usually does not get you could say aid or help to understand or to see how to go about his medication. So this could be one element of design thinking, where the one use case of design thinking. Now, moving on, it's a non-linear, as I told you, it's not a linear process, it's a non-linear process. um, and you could use it in a circular form. You could jump from one step to another. You could probably revise all the steps. So it's literally which step you want to focus more on. That's how it works. Okay. It starts from empathy, but most of the time what happens is that while you're testing, you realize that whatever you've done so far, there was one feature that was left to understand, and you go back to empathy phase. So this is how it works. It's a non-linear approach. You need to make sure that there's define, there's ideation, then there's prototype. I'll talk about each phase in brief in my next slides, but just to make you understand, starts from empathy and it's end on testing, and it has to have a solution which is lo-fi, in the form of a lo-fi prototype, but it has to be centered on a human. So you could say that design thinking is a problem solving method which focuses on solving the problem for that human, the human or the customer or the client that you have. And how do you do that? You have to understand the client first. So let's see how we do that. Before we move on to understanding the client, let's talk a little bit about the principles. It focuses on the human, as I just told you. It focuses on diverse teams. It is relentless in invention, and then relentless reinvention. You stay essential by treating everything as a prototype. Again, you don't launch it. This is still the testing phase. Until the testing phase, if everything goes fine, then we move on to the pilot launch of any product. Some global examples, as I was just talking about, PillPack was one prescription home delivery system, and Blocks, a Google project that helps kids learn to code. These two organizations or setups or startups, they also you could say used design thinking to make the process more human centered, and make them not only the process, the product, and the design itself. They use design thinking to make it more human centered. Okay, finding human. Now, it's very, very important. It's very close to my heart because I'm a mindset and behavior coach myself, and I believe that everything starts from your mindset and everything culminates in your behavior. And if one thing is not complementing the other, then of course your growth and your success is something that takes the toll on. So, finding human, you identify the user. Most of the time, what happens is that we create a solution which we think is useful for the prospective customer, because we assume it, right? And when you say finding human, that means you need to understand who your user is, first of all. So, how we do that? We start with empathy. As I told you, as you just saw that in the phase of, in the mindset as well, the first characteristic or the first trait was to have empathy. Everyone talks a lot about empathy. You must have heard of this word before. Um, it is literally the foundation of human centered design because till the time you're not able to put yourself in the shoes of the other person or the user, till the time you're not able to understand the dynamics of that user, where the person lives, how what are the activity he or she performs during the day, what are the problems or the challenges he or she is facing, what are some micro interactions or subtleties of his not only his nature but his surroundings that are there that you could take into account to create a more human-centered design solution for that person. So it all starts with empathy, and and usually what people do, what startups do, or how design thinking workshops we do, that we start with an empathy map. And in that empathy map, we talk about that user. And before starting that empathy map, we actually go and speak with the user. So we should know what a user does, what a user says, what a user feels, and what a user thinks. We should know these four elements of that prospective user. Okay. This is how we create the empathy map. It's an empathy map canvas. Okay. Now, talking about your own startups, ask these questions for your own startups. If you haven't started your startup as yet, but you have an idea, let's keep these questions for the future. But then make sure that these questions are there. You asking yourself as the startup founders. How much does your team focus on your user? When was the last time you tested out a new idea? How many different perspectives exist on your team? Teams. Now, as a founder, it's himself or herself. You need to understand that your team is the key to create success for your startup, and your team will be the people to meet or to create empathy maps for your customer and your client. So you have to make sure that you have multiple perspectives on your team. They're not, they don't just belong to the industry that you have the startup from. They could be literally from any industry, because the more diversity you bring into your team, the better chances you have to create a more human-centered design solution or a product. Now, once you have the empathy map created. Let me go back to the empathy map just to talk about the sections. Let's say now you know what your user feels, thinks, says, does. All these elements are all this information is with you now. Now, what is the next step that you do? Now you define your point of view. Okay, we call this not problem statement. We call it a point of view, because each individual is unique in his or her points of view. Okay, you cannot take someone's opinion and create a solution out of it. You need to understand how you perceive your user, and how you. I have questions coming in. Let me finish in this slide deck, and I'll take questions afterwards. Okay, so let's talk about the defining part, the next step of it after the empathy. So it's called point of view. So if you're a founder and you perceive your user in a certain perspective, that is what makes the entire difference, because you are unique and your perception of that user is also unique. And imagine if you have 2 to 3 people in your team, or 4 to 5 people in your team, and they all give you different perspectives about the same human. So you create an empathy map of that user, and a lot of insights are going to come out of it, which are going to help you define your point of view in a statement form. Now, sometimes what people do, they use this five whys technique to create their point of view or to define their point of view. I'll show you this five whys technique. We'll go through that one by one, slide by slide, and you can take a screenshot of this, or you can note it down. But it's a very helpful technique, and I believe you can use that for your own startup ideas as well. Okay. The five eyes technique. It's, for instance, let's go for a problem. Windsor Airlines' consistent flight delays are hurting the company's bottom line. Flight delays, okay? The complex problem could quickly overwhelm anyone, but focusing on users and their problems can help make it more straightforward. So let's find the root cause. Again, design thinking helps you find the root cause, because, again, the root cause of a wicked problem, which is not usually a linear problem. Okay. So the problem is that the Windsor Airlines consistent flight delays are hurting the company's bottom line. Okay, so the first why. Why might that be? We find out the reason behind it. Okay, so the reason is I've given you the reason on the slide, but we can, of course, we can, when we're doing this activity, we can come up with multiple reasons and then we can decide on one of them. So anyway, in this situation, the reason was because the majority of their flights don't depart on time. All right. Now the second why, because on average the gate is unlocked 10 minutes before a flight schedule. Now see, as I told you, these are five whys. So what we do is that we create whys or create answers of the respective problem, or the reasons behind that respective problem. So the first one is majority of their flights don't depart on time. Second is because on average the gate isn't locked 10 minutes before a flight scheduled. Third, because the dispatchers don't have the passenger data. Fourth, because it's clear who on the flight on the final passenger list, who makes it to the final passenger list. Okay, and the fifth one, because gate agents struggle to negotiate last minute passenger changes. Now we're closer to the root cause of Winster Airlines problem and have a specific user to focus on: gate agents. Now, if you see, when we're finding all the whys, there comes a time when we are able to narrow down the problem and go to the root cause. So it's literally like, you have you could say that you have um, um, narrowed it down to the root cause by chunking down. Chunking down means that, or you could say the power of 10. You could also call it the power of 10. So you went to the main problem where it all started from. And the problem was that, okay, uh, it was the gate agents who were actually being the problem, the source of the problem. So how to fix it now? Now, the original problem was Windsor Airlines' consistent flight delays are hurting the company's bottom line. That was not the problem. The problem was, user center problem was, because gate agents struggle to negotiate last minute passenger changes. So the current situation to the improved future, right? So now you know who to focus on in order to resolve the problem. This is how we do when we apply design thinking, when we want to go to the root of the problem. And this is how we define the problem. Okay. So imagine that you come up with a startup idea and you say, or you propose that this is the problem and this is the solution. But try to apply this technique on your idea and see, is it really the problem, or can you address another problem which is closest to the solution that is going to be closest to the user that you have in mind. Okay, moving on. Ideate. This is my favorite part of the design thinking process, because it talks about generating wild course of ideas, filling in the repository of ideas. Now, ideas, they're no good or bad ideas. Remember that. Whenever you're doing ideation, you should remember that they're not no good or bad ideas. They are just ideas which need to be shared and put down. You must write them on the stick-ons or the sticky notes or somewhere. You cannot just speak those ideas. You make sure that you're making a written repository of those ideas. Now, these are some ways to go about. You brainstorm. Of course, everyone knows how to brainstorm. You could use mind maps. You could use multiple other techniques for using brainstorming. Octopus clustering with their 10 plus 10, as I just talked about, the power of 10. Body storming, decision matrix. Of course, these are just a few that I've listed here, but there are multiple ways to go about ideation. But remember that ideation is the time where you discuss the problem and the user in all sorts of ways, making sure that the ideas that you put in are the ideas to resolve the problem. They are not just ideas for the sake of them, they're the ideas to resolve the problem in the best possible or the closest possible way. Now, I do want to focus on help you with the creation of persona right now, but I think this is not the right time. But I'll just define how you do that. So once your ideation is done, you could talk about the persona creation, or you could do the persona creation right when you're doing the empathy mapping. This is the canvas that you for persona creation. You need to make sure that there are demographic details are there, the psychological details are there, the solution, the contextual details are there, and of course if it involves any cost, that cost is also there. But you should make sure that you know your persona inside out. You know the interest, you know the personality, you know the skill set, you know all these elements of the user that you are targeting. Now imagine that you have the user decided, you have the problem decided, and you have the solution decided as well. Now let's create that solution. Now we can't create it because again it's not a waterfall or a linear technique. We can't create the solution in reality. We have to create a prototype. Prototypes are most of the time low fidelity prototypes. And how you do it, you create them on paper. I love it. I create on paper whenever I'm designing any product design for any startup. So I make sure that I use a paper for that. Sometimes you can do role play as well. Role playing also helps because if you've done ideation, so you put it in a scenario in a context and you do a role play on that and you see whether this will fit in the user or not. And of course, you can use certain software as well. Now, now let's say in prototyping, we have multiple ways to prototype as well. Uh, you can also create wireframing on paper. Remember that. So prototyping can mean that you created a wireframe on a paper. You know where to put the solution buttons if you are creating a mobile app, or let's say if you're creating a web solution, or even if you're creating a process, you can create that flowchart on a piece of paper, and then you can convert it in a software form, soft copy form. All right. Now you test it. Now, whatever the prototype is, remember design thinking prefers on agility, and it prefers failing faster. You could say um, it actually encourages you to fail, and it encourages you to fail faster. And the failing sometimes happens when you are doing the testing. Sometimes it happens when you're creating the prototype and you go back to the define stage and you go back to the empathy map and you see, okay, are you creating the right product or not? So, but most of the time it happens at the test phase. And here, if you fail, and if the prototype is on a piece of paper, or let's say in a soft copy on your laptop, that's it. You did not put in a lot of resources to create something which could waste your time and effort. You could easily go back to the first step and you could rehash the entire process. But this is the time you test your prototype with the end user. Could be a pilot and you pilot selected, you could say team of end users, or it could be your close circle. It could be people from different other disciplines, depending on what you want to improve or what sort of feedback you want to take of that respective product and service that you have designed. Now, these are I'll show you a slide where there are multiple ways or multiple activities that you can use for each of these steps. These 5 steps, starting from empathy to defining, ideating, prototyping, and testing, there are various ways or various activities that you can use in those phases. And remember, till the time you have the product and service not defined, design thinking is there, but it is actually there even if you have created it, even if you have launched it, and even if you have started the first year of your product and you're designing your startup, you could still apply design thinking because remember, it is for problem solving. It is problem solving method and it constantly evolves. Because your human evolves, if the user is evolving, if the human is evolving, the process itself needs to evolve, and the product and the services need to evolve as well. So these are certain ways that you could use for um, each of the phase of design thinking. In empathy, you could use this empathy map. You could use the market research grid. You could use in define. You could use, let's say, customer persona. You could use let's say create mock-ups and journey mapping. Journey mapping also comes in. So when when you're defining your product and when you're coming in the phase of ideate, you sometimes create a journey map as well for the entire user. For one persona that you have defined, you create a journey map for that. Like for instance, if the person today goes through certain process, and if you put design thinking to it, and now if this is the new process, and what will the journey look like for that in the new process? Is it better than the previous one or not? So you could use this process as well in your ideation phase. In prototyping, as I told you, apart from all the ways that I've told you, you could also use storyboarding and you could use MVP creation as well. In testing, you could use the product roadmap as we are using a journey map in ideation. You could use a product roadmap in the testing phase. Now, the point is, if you're not using any of these, you could still go and just use really basics, and those basics are: you create an empathy map, you do your brainstorming in ideation, sorry, in ideation. Before that, in defining, you go for asking questions as much as possible, so that you have created your point of view. And in prototype, you can start from lo-fi and you can go to the hi-fi design, depending on how the testing turns out. Okay, and depending on your user, of course. That's about it from my side, with respect to design thinking, because it had to be as brief as possible. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And yes, Asma, if you're here, please. And if you have any questions regarding any of the slides, I can go back to that respective slide and I can answer that question for you.
बिल्कुल मरियम, मैं ना एक एक करके क्वेश्चन स्क्रीन पे प्ले कर रही हूँ, आपको क्वेश्चन शो हो जाएंगे।
Sure.
ये पहला क्वेश्चन,
Okay, the question is, Junaid, is asked by Junaid Abasi. How can design thinking and customer discovery be aligned to not only meet user needs, but also promote sustainable and socially responsible innovation? Okay, a lot of words. Okay, I like the question. It's well worded, but it's not very clear when it comes to the what exactly you need to answer to ask here. What I'm understanding is that how it can help you not only meet the user needs but also promote sustainability. See, sustainability comes in later. When you're creating a product, let's talk. I'm assuming that you're talking about the stage when the product is yet being created. So when you're creating that product, or let's assume you're innovating the existing product, once the user needs are met, the sustainability not only depends on helping the user resolve that problem, but it also depends on understanding the ecosystem, understanding the environment, understanding the economic condition, understanding the global trends. You need to understand. You need to do the market research. It's not just the user only. It has to be the user, but you need to see where the user is standing in that market. Okay, so you need to do the study with respect to the market as well. Once that is aligned, because this is what we do in model canvas. That's another phase of design thinking, where we create a business model canvas, and in that business model canvas we talk about the environment or the global trends or the market as well, while creating that solution for that respective user. So just try to align the two. Okay, once you've aligned the two, sustainability comes in later. Sustainability comes in when the solution is not only solving the problem, but it can solve the problem for a longer period of time. So that's how sustainability happens, and most of the time technology is the medium to create sustainability. I hope I've answered the question. Yes. The next question is, what are the key stages of the design thinking? How do they contribute to problems? I just told you the key stages. Starts from and they are non-linear, so you could pick and choose each stage, but you always start with the human. So your human comes in when you start with empathy. Okay, which approaches to involving customers in the co-creation of solutions during the design thinking process are most effective? Um, Okay, so which approaches? Okay, now design thinking is a methodology. Approaches, I'll talk about a mindset instead of approaches. You need to have that mindset which is driven to resolve the problem for the user. Okay, now if you're driven to resolve the problem for the user or the human, uh, that is the mindset that will help you create a problem which is more in line with the solution that you're looking for. So remember, it's the human-centered design. Okay, and the this is actually which is going to give you success by the end of it. Okay, and again, it depends on the phases, each phase, how you respond to each of the phases. Okay, how can we create a feedback loop between design thinking iterations and customer discovery phases to continually improve our product development process? Feedback, again, it's remember, you must have heard of agile approach, right? In project management, we use a methodology or an umbrella term called agile, and in agile we use Scrum. In Scrum, there is a process called sprints. There is another process called design sprints. Now, design sprints is a terminology that has been given by Google. Design sprints is a concept in which actually the feedback loop is created. So whatever you create, uh, whatever you're creating or whichever phase you're in, you are in connection with two people, who, one, your user, and second, your stakeholders. And stakeholders are everyone in the ecosystem. Okay, so once you have a connection, let's say correspondence or communication with all the stakeholders, that's how you create a more fluent rapport or feedback cycle in your design sprints, you could say, or design journey. How can the insights gained from customer discovery be effectively communicated to stakeholders and team members? There are various ways to go about it. Again, communication it all depends on what you want to communicate, when you want to communicate, and why do you need to communicate. So again, the more fluent it is, the better it is. You cannot go back to your stakeholder after a very long time and saying that you messed up or you did not create the right solution. You have to do it the sooner you can, and the medium can be anything, of course. Again, it depends on what user or what stakeholder you're talking about. I missed the last question, Asma. How can we adapt design thinking customer discovery methods to be more inclusive and sensitive to diverse culture context? Beautiful question. Again, when you're doing the market research and when you're doing the empathy phase, that is the phase where you find out if inclusivity is an element, or if diversity is an element that you want to inculcate in your solution or not. Is it just something that you want to do it for the sake of it, or is it something that is a byproduct of your design, or is it something that is the focus of your solution or your product? It all depends on what your startup idea is and who is your user. There can be multiple examples of that. For example, that you want to create let's assume that you want to create a skincare product or skincare line for your customers. Now, in the skincare is it's human skin, right? So we can't just focus human skin for women only. It can be a skincare line which is feasible for all the humans. So it could be for men, it could be for women, or it could be for any of the genders in the society that we have nowadays, depending on how you want to inculcate inclusivity and diversity. If you want to use technology, if you want to use the medium of AI, then of course there are various other ways to go about it. How can we surprise and delight the customer? By telling them, by understanding them better. So imagine how you get surprised and delighted if you are the customer for any brand. If they go an extra mile for you, if they make you feel special, and if they actually resolve your problem and they don't make you beat about the bush, or get stuck in so many processes. Of course, that's the best way to delight the customer. Understand their problem, put yourself in their shoes, and then you can design something for them. What methods may be used to evaluate the viability of concept developed through the design thinking, using insights from consumer? Okay, so what methods to evaluate the viability of concepts? Okay, there can be various methods. There is a method called it's a questioning method. We call it what might be. Okay, in that questioning method, you actually ask these questions of what might be by trying to drill down on the solution that you've created. So, for example, if you say I'm creating silver spoons, okay. So if you're asking this method, this evaluation strategy, which is called what might be, if you're using that, you could ask the founder or the product team or the design team multiple prompts in this one statement. If they're designing silver spoons, you could say, okay, what will happen if those silver spoons are put in sunlight? What might be, or what might happen when you put them in sunlight? What might happen if they are used to feed toddlers? What might happen? So you create multiple scenarios. So that's how you check the viability of any product in connection to your user. How do I measure the impact of effectiveness of design thinking and customer discovery initiatives? Again, if impact and effectiveness of any process, be that design thinking or any other process, if you're using, it all depends on whether you solve the problem or not. So if you have solved the problem and if you are ready to go to market, and if the pilot run is successful, I think that there are certain elements that can show you if the methodology is successful or not. How to maintain design balance for the marketplace, as they both have to be B2B and B2C engagement. Again, depends. If your solution is both B2C and B2B, so one solution does not fit all. So you need to make sure that what you're creating and what you're offering to your B2C clients, or what you're offering to your B2B clients, the way you design it the micro interactions that you use, the features that you embed in all sorts of products and designs that you use for these two customers, they cannot be similar. So that's the first thing. What approaches to involving customers in the co-creation of solutions during the design thinking process? Empathy. They're called empathy interviewing. Do you know empathy interviewing? Use empathy interviewing or interviews when you are in the empathy phase. Go and talk to them. Go and be with them. Spend a few hours with them. Understand what's the problem. What is causing that problem? Is it something that they are is it a mindset problem or is it a problem of the surroundings? What exactly is it? And then you can come back and probably create a more, you can define your problem statement better when you've been with them. So you conduct empathy interviews. Any other? Sure. Asma will take care of that. What trends or changes in the market could impact the demand for a solution? All sorts of changes, from global trends, global economic trends, to the climate condition, to the market surge, to the financial condition of your own startup. There are various elements that can impact your the creation of your solution and to go to market, okay, to create a go to market strategy for that. Multiple factors, of course. Sometimes it's the stakeholder management that gets stuck and that does not let you go and launch your product. So, of course, there are multiple. But again, the major thing that you can work on is understanding the customer and then understanding your stakeholders. And then, of course, when you're understanding the stakeholders, you understand the rest of the context as well where you are in.
जी, हमने तकरीबन अपने सारे क्वेश्चन जो हैं वो एड्रेस कर लिए हैं एंड थैंक यू सो मच मिस मरियम फॉर योर टाइम और बहुत अच्छे सेशन के लिए काइंडली अगर पॉसिबल है तो आप स्लाइड शेयर कर दीजिएगा ताकि जो स्टार्टअप स्लाइड के लिए रिक्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं मैं उनके साथ शेयर कर दूंगी एंड दैट्स इट फॉर नाउ थैंक यू सो मच एवरीवन और आप लोगों से इंशाल्लाह अपकमिंग वीक मंडे में मुलाकात होगी एक नए सेशन और नए टॉपिक के साथ अल्लाह हाफिज एवरीवन
थैंक यू अल्लाह हाफिज